Back to Sitting with Ashley. I'm Ashley. This is a collective convo, I think. I just got done watching this Netflix show, Wayward, with Toni Collette, is that her name? Who they casted really well. She's a fucking monster. What else does she play? Toni Collette. She always plays a bad person. Anyway. It was a really interesting show. It's a limited series on Netflix right now, but I want to talk about the hegemony. My mentor reminded me of the word this word the other day, so that's why I'm using it. Hegemony. Hegemony is the predominance or dominance of one group, state, or entity over others, often achieved through a combination of political, economic, ideological, or cultural power, as well as the consent of the dominated group. So the hegemony that I want to talk about around this show and others like it, for instance Riverdale as well, is the way that youth are being treated in these shows. It's going to be, so the whole point of Hollywood and entertainment, the entertainment industry, as you know if you've participated in my hidden messages in media course, is to keep the masses pacified and happy enough not to rebel or revolt, right? So the fact that there's a lot of, I don't usually watch I don't at all watch mainstream TV. I don't know. So I watched Riverdale, and Riverdale came out a long time ago. But the fact that in both of these shows, the children are considered troubled, or there's some sort of rebelling that they're doing, and the parents' response is to just send them away. And it concerns me because people are going to think that's the way to deal with their family, especially under this administration. The thing about media, in pop culture media, is that they put stuff out early enough so that by the time it's happening in real life, people are comfortable with the idea of it. And so when we are seeing what's happening with this administration right now, we need to think back to who this happened to. And we need to think back to the Native Americans here in this, on Turtle Island, which is the Americas, right? So North America, Canada, which includes Canada, United States, and Mexico, is all considered part of Turtle Island. Now, the way that the Catholic Church went about separating and indoctrinating children from their family, from their cultures, was by taking them and putting them into these schools and who's driving by? Convincing them. Nobody ever drives down the alley. Convincing the children that they were bad, that their cultural practices were bad, and indoctrinating them through violence, through obedience, through discipline, through control. And so we know that was the Catholic Church. I don't know if that's mainstream or not. I feel like a lot of people who do live in the United States don't think about Native folks, unfortunately. And if they do, it's done in a past way. Because there's a lot of comments on videos and stuff where Native folks are like, "Hey, we're still here," right? They didn't kill us all. They were not successful in that attempt. And we're still here. But I'm bringing up this example because it's so fascinating. I didn't have to go through any troubled teen programs. I was in foster care, but my mother did put me into mental institutions as a way of doing what I'm talking about. The first one was at 14 or 15. She completely betrayed my trust by reading my journals, and then what she found in my journals, which was incredibly normal teenage behavior, literally normal. It's normal to smoke weed, it's normal to have crushes on boys, it's normal to do things that your parents don't know you're doing. That's normal teenage behavior. And yeah, so she was like, I've talked about this a lot in my own personal experience, how my mother could not see me as like separate from her. I was always an extension of her, so my behavior reflected her, and that's this same narrative that these shows are gaining compliance in, right? Because when people watch this shit, subliminally, there's messaging, and then that subliminal messaging hits at your subconscious. So you're w- there's a difficulty to distinguish in sometimes what is subconscious and what is fact, especially people who aren't neurodivergent. Like, I don't know how you guys organize your brains, but my brain is very organized. And hasn't always been like this. But when I want to recall something, I now know where it is in my brain. Where I feel like a lot of neurotypical people, which are the people who are like neurodivergence, it includes autistic folks, it includes people with mental illness, it includes people who are just different. We think in color. And neurotypical people, I'm not sure if there's a whole lot of thinking there at all. I've had conversations with people about the way that their brain works, if they can see things in their brain or if they hear things. There's like conversations about this on social media too. So anyway, all that to say is, if you are someone who doesn't have, I feel like we all have this ability, but it's been conditioned out of us in certain degrees, right? Through our education, through our indoctrination, through our careers, through our diets, through our music choices, things like that. Like, everybody has the ability to do this. I believe that neurodivergence is like a human evolution. I believe, it was funny. I was making a joke the other day to Baby Daddy because he said something about the Tylenol thing. And he was like, did you, and he tried to push it back on me. And he's like, did you take Tylenol while you were pregnant? I said, autism isn't the problem here. The problem is Donald Trump in his administration. And I reminded him, I said, you and I are both autistic. That's more than likely we're now got it. Just because you're too old to have gotten that diagnosis, dude, you're fucking weird, Like, you are not a normal person. Like, you're not the way your brain works, right? And he's an addict, and, so he does his own stuff to pacify the way his brain works because, it's just being conditioned through criminal justice system and everything. People adopt certain coping mechanisms to deal with things. But the thing that I said to him was, I think that, and I've had conversations with a few of my other mother friends about this, is because I think that autistic folks, like, we're seeing more kids that millennials are having right now who are nonverbal. And so the joke I made was, maybe these kids are nonverbal because they just took our First Amendment rights, which is the, freedom of speech. And that was funny. I thought it was. But anyway, all that to say is, when we see these, be careful what you're ingesting at a pop culture level, because the way that media is framing that and normalizing sending your children away to be brainwashed in cults. Now, these shows both have relatively happy endings, but the brainwashing is so fascinating to me, and that's that hegemony, right? The control. Now, the past 2 years since Palestine has been happening, I mean, the propaganda that Israel has had on Palestine, I know we're all over the place, just keep up, sit back. The way that Israel has convinced for, over 75 years that they had a right to this land, and now in the past 2 years, like, billions and billions and billions of dollars of propaganda has just gone through the trash because enough people on this planet are able to put A and B together and equal, no, this is the truth, right? And it's not just Palestine. When Palestine came out, there has also been all these conversations about Congo, about Sudan, about Tigray, about Haiti, about all of these other places in the world. We're seeing revolutions happening. We're seeing people, the youth, take over. So when we're seeing this juxtaposition of Gen Z starting riots like they did in Nepal, completely taking over the government in like less than 2 days, electing their first women like in a democratic process that they held via Discord. I mean, the perseverance and organization of all of that is incredible. But the system that be is going to say your kids are bad. And we're seeing this happening here in the United States, right? In certain ways. So autistic kids have already been targeted, kids with disabilities who, in addition to or other than autism, with the funding and resources being taken away. I know here in Arizona, so I was on the trajectory to get Niall diagnosed and get support through disability and through this administration. That's not a reality. So thank goodness I'm not reliant on that disability money, because I would be fucked. But that's just my personal experience, because again, I'm neurodivergent. I can see my pattern recognition is incredible. Plus, I've just studied this government a lot and the way that they move. So I've seen this since 2020. I've seen how this was going to be going, regardless of who's in the president's seat, right? But anyway, all that to say is, when you're seeing, be careful about what shows you're watching, and if you aren't able to think critically about the show, at least ask yourself a couple questions. Like, would the plot of this show, or no, how could the plot of this show be used to gain compliance in the masses, right? That's a good place to start. And then, so when you ask yourself that question, then look for certain themes, right? So in these themes, there was blame on the parents. Now, when I studied, the thing that I studied child soldiers a lot in my undergrad. The thing that's insane, and what we're witnessing at a global scale too right now, is the way that children are being taken from their families and used. And remember what RFK said when he got behind that podium, and he made that very first speech about autism in the spring. He said something about, he said kids are our greatest resource. So that's because that's like what we first started talking about with the residential schools for the Native Americans. When they took their children, they gained compliance because the children were collateral. That's what we're seeing in Congo too. The children are collateral. Now, I studied, again, child soldiers, which also happened in Congo and mid-Africa areas, Uganda, Rwanda, and Congo. And that's exactly what they did. The Lord's Resistance Army, Joseph Kony, would force children to either kill their parents, rape their parents, harm their parents, or siblings, and then that's how they gained the child to be in compliance with what they were doing, and that's how they killed their soul. So don't let anything take your soul. Easier said than done in a society that's this sick. But I'm very concerned with how normalized it's becoming in the media, and not just in the media. Like yesterday I saw that ICE had arrested a parent, or they took a parent and left a child in the car. So the separation of families is happening, not just in Palestine or Congo or Sudan. It's happening here in the United States, and it always has been. But people have a hard time with that because there's a certain level of apathy and ignorance that people want to maintain in order to, live their life, right? Enjoy their freedom, right? So I just want you to pay attention to how things are being presented in the media, especially if you are watching shows that are like new. I don't usually like to watch dark stuff, but I think that it's really interesting to watch things that we can gain insight on, like the goals of the powers that be. And remember that the powers that be are not just Trump. In fact, Trump is a puppet. There are much darker, deeper things behind that man, believe it or not, that are actually running the show. And I think that's really important. So this man has been bribed to take this position because they know that he's going to be willing to sign whatever it is they want to sign. He is a puppet. So don't keep using that man as a scapegoat. He is not smart. He might be conniving, he might be narcissistic, but he's not smart. The man can't pronounce acetaminophen. Acetaminophen? What is this word? Acetaminophen? Anyway, that doesn't cause autism. So I want you to be aware of what things are being presented and the way that it gains complacency And I think if you haven't witnessed that and paid attention to it since COVID, um, wow, I don't know. And for me, it was really easy in COVID, but again, I have a master's degree in social justice and human rights. I understand how the system works. I've been on the front lines, I've been in the board meetings, I've been at the police commissions, I've been in those spaces. They do not care. They do not care. And that's the thing about the population, is that the population always tries to appeal, and that's what Asada Shakur said too, who passed away not yesterday, the day before, is that you will never be able to appeal to your oppressors to set you free, right? And so when I was going to the police commission, like with Black Lives Matter and other grassroots organization in Los Angeles, so many people would get behind the podium and talk to these motherfuckers who were shooting down their family members, right? So the police commission is like an elected body by the chief, right? So it's all an internal thing. So like when there's a police shooting, who investigates it? The police commission signs off on it. Police commission is highly funded by like NRA and other Republican and other foundations that they all stick together, right? It's the 1%. I mean, it's not even the 1%, it's lower than that within the hierarchy. But they're all in cahoots together. So anyway, everyone would get behind the podium and people would cry, and myself included. I cussed out the chief one day in a very emotional speech, and it did nothing. I mean, it made me feel better for a minute. But the point of the matter is that they want you to be in your emotions, because when you are easily emotionally manipulated, you are easily controlled. And again, when they go after your children, what RFK said, children are our greatest resource. Why? Because they're going to gain compliance of the adults. And we need the compliance of the adults, which is again why they're targeting millennials so hard with our favorite bands, our favorite food, right? Like the Taco Bell bringing back like the empanadas, are those what those called? Shit was good as fuck, but that was like early 2000s. Bitch, I used to be such a fucking Taco Bell drive-through queen. Anyway, god damn it. Anyway, no. But like all that to say, so like now at this point in time, we know that like Taco Bell is giving money to Israel. We know that McDonald's is. We know that all of these things are. And who runs those things? Other impoverished people, just like the army, right? The greatest way to get enrollment into the army is to be in poverty, because there's a promise of education if you don't die, right? It's just like Hunger Games. There's a promise of a better life, of education, of status, right? And again, it's all done through obedience and control on the children. So when we think about revolution, when we think about the world that we want to see, when we think about our children and how to keep them safe, it first starts with our awareness about how this system is gaining compliance, and it starts with entertainment. I hope this makes sense. Go watch Wayward. It's a limited series event. But if you want to understand the way that groupthink happens, it's a good thing. It's a good thing to see if you want to see the way that egotistical people work. It gives you a glimpse into reality. And I think a lot of people don't make that connection because they're just like, oh, it's just a show, right? Okay, but the show was drafted up. The show was scripted. The show was thought of some pretty monstrous people, right? I remember the first time it wasn't the first time. My friend Katie and I went to go see Saw 4, I think. And I didn't like those movies, but again, I really enjoy thinking about stuff. And Saw is a movie that has a lot of hidden stuff. But anyway, was it Saw or was it The Hills Have Eyes? No, I think it was Saw. Anyway, we left. I left in like the first 10 minutes because I was so grossed out. And I was so like, bleh. I was like, who thinks of this stuff? And that was before I knew what I knew now about everything, right? Before I had a lot of those experiences I shared. But that was my main thing. I was like, who thought of this? Like, who thought of something so disgusting? I don't remember the scene, but it was something so grotesque. And it's just like crazy because now, for the past 2 years, we've been seeing that shit in real life, right? All over the world, okay? Specifically in Palestine, though, We've been seeing the children being bombed, limbs flying, blood, fetuses coming out of their mothers because of bombs. It's just, it's something that 10 years ago no one would have been able to digest. There would have been mass hysteria. Why has there been so much compliance in this? I have a lot of theories about this, especially around the vaccination, the COVID vax. I sat that one out, and I'm still able to critically think, but I don't know about other folks. I've talked to some people who are able to introspect on how their bodies were changed by that. And what I have heard is that there was more selfish tendencies, there was more anger, and there's more fog, which is exactly what you would need to be able to continue moving the way that these motherfuckers are moving. And if you have children, I would highly recommend to pay attention to the ways in which these systems are talking about them, the way that they're going after them. If you have the ability to pull your children out of school, I would highly recommend it at this time. I don't know how much longer that's going to be a possibility, but this administration here in the United States has turned they've reduced the numbers of children. So something along the lines of 7, like a child is only available for what is it? 7 and 14. I think that a child can get tried for crime at 14. Trump admin, child ages of that's not yielding any results. I really hate looking this man up. He's such a douche. Child age I don't know. I'll have to figure out the actual wording for it, but I've seen it all over the place. What age is a child? What's the word? What is that word? Able to be tried as an adult. Okay, this number changed, I know for sure. A child can be tried as an adult at different ages between 14 and 17. Each state has its own laws. So just pay attention to the way they're going after children and the way that they're making things more difficult for families in general. Alright? That's my main takeaway. And be careful try to think critically about the ways that you yourself are being brainwashed and the way that you yourself are falling for the hegemony, which is all of these different ways. And I just talked about that too the other day in that story time with my role. I had a conversation with someone and it was very interesting to me. So I'm just in this space of thinking a lot. I don't believe that we can become free if we don't think we're not, right? Like that Bob Marley song, liberate yourselves from mental slavery. A lot of people don't, especially here in the United States, don't see themselves. They've gotten enough comfort to not believe that they are oppressed. So children are oppressed, right? Children are being targeted. These are facts. So pay attention to what you watch and the way that it is setting up a certain narrative. Okay? Have a good one.